Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Factorio Bob's Angels. We're now on episode 35. So, the premise for this episode, as I said in the last one, is going to be trying to sort out the iron throughput and also finally getting slag processing finished. I kind of started it and got halfway, got a bit distracted. So, that's the premise for this episode. We start off by just checking a few things that I'd done in between episodes. We also check that military science is actually being produced, even though it's virtually non-existent. But yeah, in between episodes, I set up the next level of crushers and sorters, because this episode we're going to be doing combination sorting, so it'd probably be wise to do it on the highest tier machine that we have available. So yeah, there's a number of things I did in between the episode, which I'll go through. There's not too much, just a little bit of tidying up, this and that, but we'll go through that. We don't really need it just yet, but I decided to start by upgrading to steel furnaces on the first line of iron production. We will have a second line when the ore's actually coming through enough, but at the moment we've just got that one running, and soon it will need upgrading, so I'll just get that done at the start, as we were starting to buffer the iron a little bit, but it was immediately depleted by that. And then come and have a look at which Angels ores we're running low on. And we've completely run out of bobmonium, so that's something we're going to need to sort out. Javolite is now the slowest ore of the two, of saphirite and javolite, so we're going to need to do something about that. So I send the train up, I sort out the very important colour, and then I remembered that I said before I was only going to upgrade the colour when I upgrade the engine, which I'll have to do soon, so I'll get that sorted. But that's not the bottleneck for it, it's the fact that we're on these infinite patches. And it's just not coming through fast enough as much as we're using. So even though I'm going to set up combination sorting this episode, we're going to need to do something about the lack of javolite. That will speed it up a tiny bit, but not very much. Also, the downside to doing that is it's going to push that pollution out into the biters down in the southwest, and they're going to start attacking that wall a lot more frequently. So we're going to have to go and reinforce that at some point, because it is being attacked fairly regularly anyway, so this is just going to make it worse. So that'll be something I'll have to do very soon. Maybe when we've got lasers, that'll be much better to have there, and we could probably increase the javolite mining even more, relay that patch out so it's fully covered. Maybe upgrade the miners if we're able to build them. So we come up and we start extending what will be the ore bus. So this will have 2 of the 4 main ores and 1 belt of rubite and bobmonium. But we just take 1 up for now. I start trying to look at putting in a circuit condition to say only send it up to combination sorting if there's enough going through to miscellaneous. I play around with it for a bit. It doesn't really work that well, and I just eventually just give up and think I'll deal with it another time. If we run out of javolite, they're neither are gonna run. So whatever, I'll put that in at a later date when I decide exactly how I want to do it. Maybe put a chest in or something, I don't know. There's probably a simple way of doing it with the belts. I just couldn't come up with it just then, and I've not played for a while, so yeah, yeah, I just leave it for now, I give up, and we just carry on heading up to set up the combination sorting for iron. So in between episodes, I try not to do any research at all, but I did do one little bit. I did the research for all the stages required for slag processing, all the filtering and stuff, just so we got the right level for this, and we don't have to wait around for the research to be done, and we can let the iron back up a little bit to make some military science. I also randomly rebuilt the coal station. I went down to just go and check the area, and I realised I didn't like it being on the opposite side of the rail line to where the ore patch was, and for some reason I just decided to rebuild it. I think I just got a bit carried away, forgot I wasn't recording, and you know how it was with Factorio, you sit down for what feels like 5 minutes and it turns out being, you know, sort of 15, 20, and I went and rebuilt the whole station. It does look a bit nicer, and I will show it at some point, or we'll see it one time when I go down in the recording. Nothing too major, I think, but you know, it did take like sort of 10 minutes. But yeah, so we start laying out the area. I haven't really got a set design for this combination sorting. I used to just do it with inserters, but I want to try and do this completely with loaders, just because very late game it'll have a pretty high throughput. I come down for some reason, I can't remember exactly why it is. Ah, that's it. There's a biter base that's got very close to the turret, so close that it attacks continuously, the turrets have run out of ammunition and they just keep getting destroyed. And then the bots just go and place them again. So it's just hoovering up resources basically, which is not very good at all. I should have noticed this between episodes, and it does become a bit of a distraction, but I try and get it over and done with as quickly as possible. It's just one thing I wish I'd done while I was down here was grab a stack of ore crushers and sorters, because I've only got one of each on me for some bizarre reason. I don't even know why I didn't start with a stack of them. But I decided to request some, thinking that it would get here pretty quick, even though it's completely the opposite end of the factory. And I head up. That's why I started placing this area as ghost images, so that the bots can just come and place it. But yeah, I kind of start messing around. I have my nanobot switched on, which place is the only one I've got. I request some, thinking it's going to be really quick, but I'm not actually stood within the logistics requesting area, the orange bit, whatever it's called. But we start to lay out the stuff that we have, and we put ghost images for the stuff we don't have. We then have a warehouse just to sort the crushed stone out, give it a bit of buffer, so it takes a lot for it to ever lock up. And we also put in belt restrictions to say only let in so much ore, so that the system never locks up from one crushed ore or the other. And plus, we don't go and fill an entire warehouse of resources that we don't really need to fill it up with. You know, it's all about throughputs. You don't really need to stockpile too much. It's nice to have a little bit just to keep it running when we run out, but there's no point in having loads if we're not using it. You can also see this belt of the tin and quartz is backing up. We have to sort that out at some point, but a bit of a problem with the bots is they've not got enough charging places, which is something I'll need to sort out at some point, because it's good to have plenty of charging places for them. But I put down some pretty crappy 4-pad chargers, which I never normally use. It's just all I can produce right now, and I can't be asked to wait for things to be requested. So we set up 4 crushers of each, which should be loads. I can't remember off the top of my head what the ratio is for crushers to sorters when doing combination. This may support up to 8 sorters. I can't quite remember, I think, off the top of my head, but I think I start with 4. But it's an expandable layout, so it doesn't really matter how many we place at the moment. And for throughput's sake, I have a full belt of sapphirite and javolite. I could do a single belt and side load it, and then use loaders on the sorters in that nice step design that I've been using, but that reduces your throughput by half. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to 2 full belts at the end, but at least it's laid out in a way that has already compensated for that. So, you know, always best to try and plan ahead, in my opinion. So the layout I do use does use twice as much loaders, or a third more. I don't know what the ratio is, but it'll also use a lot of splitters and underground belts. But I get a bit tired of waiting for the sorters, and I go and start clearing some trees in the logistics area just to pass the time. I get a bit fed up with it after a while, and decide to just drive down and get it myself. And in my frustration, I start driving into things a bit stupidly, but at least we're in the logistics network and the bots can go and clean up my mess for me, because I'm a lazy git and they're my slaves. That's what they're there to do for me. So good thing they're not sentient and try and run off from me treating them badly. But yeah, so we finally get some sorters, and I can start trying to lay it out. I think I have a go at laying it with 2 spaces to do the step design, but there's just not a tidy way of splitting them up. So I go for the kind of linear line setup where we'll take a split of each one, and it's kind of a little mini bus. Not the tidiest or efficient use of resources, but it means we can use loaders and not inserters. So I guess it's efficient in some ways. But yeah, this area will just continue up north as far as it'll need to go for every specific ore that we're going to need to use. I'll either use the logistics network or the circuit network to bring up signals of what we've got, or we could just let the belts back up. I don't know. That's an easier way, but you can't control it remotely. So, you know, each way has its downsides and its benefits. I don't know. We'll just see how it goes. Right now, we just need iron ore in the system, so we get a single belt put in. It's probably not enough to throughput that sorting area, but I don't stick around long enough to find out. I just want to get this in and also get the slag processing done this episode. While I've been away, I did try and have a think of how I want to do things. I want to be more prepared for episodes, have more things happening in recordings, so there's more concentrated content. That does mean more preparation between episodes, but I try and keep the stuff in between episodes as simple and as little as possible, so no one's really missing out on anything. There's a weird bug here, or at least I think it's a bug, using the nanobots for clearing the trees. If you place belt in one of the green clouds that are still there after clearing a tree, or are still clearing a tree, it damages or clears the belt. So we get this iron belt put in, so that will now bring the iron ore down onto these 2 belts here. I also want to start trying to tidy this up, because the galena and tin should have this warehouse on their own. There shouldn't be any slag coming down here, or any of the nickel, I think it is. So I put in a temporary belt to get rid of the slag. We bring that up here. This will only be in place until we've got rid of the slag. We'll also sort the loader up north so that it doesn't send any more slag down, and eventually that'll be gone and we can get rid of that belt we've just put in. We take away that warehouse there, which was just an overflow of slag again. We do have a hell of a lot of slag all stored in places at the moment, which is a bit ridiculous. But yeah, the next order of this episode is to come up and put these sorting warehouses in so that they put the correct ores onto the correct belts, and this sort of bus bringing stuff back down looks pretty silly at the moment, looks a bit thin, but later on when we need the throughput, it's going to have the throughput we need, so it will make sense later on, I promise. And we now come and have a look at starting to lay out the slag processing area. So the research I did in between episodes was for these filtration units to Mark III. They were available to be produced, so I thought, you know, this episode, why not do the slag on these? Might as well do the highest tier we have available. So we get these laid out. This is a layout I have used pretty much before, kind of like this, pretty much expandable as big as we need it, so each part of the process can be expanded. It's sort of done in tiers, so this is the coal filtration bit. We're doing coal. We can do the ceramic filter, but being as coal is nice and available and close, I can't remember what the ceramic filter needs, but yeah, we're using coal in this instance. So I lay it out a couple of times to try and get it right. Everything should really fit in between these, including the power, which it was going to clash with there, which is why I wanted to move it up. These assemblers then need to go above it. It would be nicer to kind of have them within the width of those units there, but yeah, it doesn't really matter too much. We've got plenty of space in this area, and this is all laid out for slag slurry processing. So we get the request set up for some coal. We also request some of the metal filters, but we probably won't build those in the factory. I'll just manually feed this thing so it always has enough to run continuously. Otherwise it does jam up, but you could put in a filter condition, I guess, but I don't really bother. And we get these inserters laid out which fit nicely in here using the underground belts. So with the right number of filters, this system should run nice and smoothly. I'm using plastic just because a bit of an iron shortage, and with some pumps, plastic does have really nice throughput and an average underground distance. So I manually get some filters made to feed that. We also look at getting some water purification set up. I do set it to bring it in logistically to begin with, which is a bit stupid. And I do in a minute at some point go and connect it in directly. But to begin with, I think getting bots to bring it in was nice and easy, but it turns out it's very lazy, and lazy things aren't always the best. In fact, quite often they're never the best way to do things. But I get this area laid out. We get dumping or voiding of the mineralized water, which I know I could use at some point, so maybe we'll stick that in, but it's not going to be the end of the world. So at the moment I just void it for now, just to get rid of it, just to keep the system running. And we get everything connected with underground pipes, which isn't the most efficient in some ways. I mean, it is with fluid mechanics, I guess, not with in terms of using plastic, but the fuel or crude oil filtering at the moment, we're kind of topping out on petroleum. We're not really using enough of it. I kind of miss being able to create sulfuric acid with petroleum. That kind of would be nice, but you know, I'm pretty sure you can't now with Bob's the way it's set up. I don't know if that's the same in vanilla. I can't remember which part the changes for that came from, but you know, again, it's not going to be the end of the world, so it doesn't really matter. And I carry on fiddling around trying to set this system up. We also need to do some sulfuric wastewater filtering, which will give us some sulfur, which we can feed into some sulfuric acid production somewhere. I don't think I've got that set up anywhere at the moment, so we'll probably stick in a little area here so it can feed itself, because the slurry production does use sulfuric acid. I also need to put in a circuit condition to say only use the purified water from that system if there's so much in the tank. I kind of mess around with it a bit, getting it wrong. Even this is a bit wrong, I think, looking at it. Yeah, because the pump needs to go before the tank, and then the output of the tank needs to give priority to the purified water coming from the sulfuric wastewater production, which I sort of mess up in a bit. I put another pump to help the throughput. That's the only downside to using plastic pipes. They're nice and thick, but you kind of need a pump to help push everything through. But later on, when we get to high tier stuff, it will be able to deal with a high throughput. Hopefully someone can tell me if I'm completely wrong and I have to eat my words at this point, but that's how I found it in my experience. But fluid mechanics have never been my forte. I've only ever just bodged stuff in with fluid mechanics to the point where it will work, and I usually leave it in places that I won't go to, so I don't have to look at how ugly and horrible it is. It goes strongly against my making things absurdly tidy ethics, which I'm not really applying in this. There's a lot of artifacts lying around, so yeah, my factories are usually really sort of OCD or just fussy. I don't always like using the word OCD when it's not actually OCD, it's just being fussy. But we get the last stage laid out, and currently I just get it set up for just all iron and copper, but we could change these to do any of the various resources that we need, which is what's great about this system. And it's also why I'm putting it into a warehouse, so we've got enough space for loaders to take out whatever resource we want and stick it on whatever belt, and we can change any of those units to do any of the various types of resources without having to worry about where it's going to go into the system, because eventually it'll have all the loaders set up. There'll be one for iron, one for copper, one for tin and galena, and then the last one will do any of the bob's ores, which will go on to eventually what will be the 4 belts going down into that bob's sorting area I've got. It just makes it a bit easier, and 4 belts should always be enough to cover what we need. One thing you can see on the screen just back there was the crushed geode stuff. I've got no restrictions on there, so that is currently locked up at the moment. But each crusher produces more than one type of unrefined stone. I'm not quite sure how to put in the filter for it so that it's always got space for every kind, so I'll have to come up with something there, or if someone has a handy way of doing that, that would be appreciated, but I'm sure I'll work it out. But right now it's not really a problem. We're producing all of the kinds of stones in the area. I've not put a filter on, so they'll eventually produce a full chest of each, so if that ever causes a problem, that locking up, we'll have to work it out at some point, but right now it's not really an issue. So I extend a third purified filtering, just to get enough for this system to run fully. We also put in the pipes there, which I mentioned earlier, for getting the water in directly and not through the logistics system, which is kind of a bit stupid. And we just kind of generally have a look at this area just to see if it's all running. I believe I've got these ratios right for the second 2 stages. I think I've got maybe just the right amount of slurry production, or not enough. I can't remember what the ratio is. I think it's 1 slurry machine for 2 filters, and then 2 of the last stage for every filter. I can't quite remember. But so long as we're processing more slag than we're creating, that's kind of the aim here, so that this system never locks up. But we've got a lot of slag backed up to try and get through, so the system's going to have to be big enough to use up more slag than we're producing to get rid of that backup. But it is quite nice storing the slag slurry in tanks and then putting in a filter, because you can use that stuff to create pretty much any ore with the right ingredients. So yeah, I may extend the slag slurry production even more, and then put in even more tanks to store it and store most of it, and then any overflow just turn it into iron and copper, and then at a later date we can do whatever we want with it. For example, we've run out of bobmonium, so we're going to run out of tin soon. So it might be handy to store a load of slag slurry, maybe almost all the tank can store, and then any overflow gets turned into copper and iron. And then when we run out of bobmonium, we can get it to produce tin for us, and then hopefully that'll produce enough tin for now. Although I think the slag slurry crystallizing produces galena and tin, so not quite sure if that's going to work. But yeah, there's a bobmonium patch in the direction that the bus is heading. We've almost got to it, so that's not going to be too difficult to clear to. I think there's also another one up in the sapphirite area near the javolite and the next sapphirite patch, so we're also going to need that soon. So it's not going to be too difficult for us to get some more. It's not going to be the end of the world, but we do need tin for science. It's at the heart of some of the earlier science production for circuits, so we are going to need a lot of it, and we're going to run out fairly quickly. But we do have quite a bit of a buffer sat in the sorting machines and in this chest, so yeah, we'll just have to keep an eye on how much we've got, and just before we run out completely, just make sure we've got all the necessary things to go and set up the first outpost for bobmonium. So yeah, there's how many outposts do I need to set up now? I need a crotinium one, bobmonium, rubite, and javolite. No, not javolite, sorry, sapphirite. I get all of these a bit mixed up. But yeah, we'll need to get all of those done. I think I'm going for the southwest crotinium patch first, but there's also another one in the southeast. And in the southeast, there is a sapphirite patch, or steratite. Steratite's the light blue one. I'm getting awfully confused with them all now. I said sapphirite a minute ago, but you know what I mean. The two that produce copper need depots setting up, and yeah, bobmonium and the rubite starting patches have been completely mined. So we keep getting attacked down in the southwest because of that increase of javolite mining, but I generally just take a look at this area to make sure it's running all right. I was going to end the episode there, but then I decide I'm going to come down and have a look at this now. We've got the increased iron production. We did keep running out of javolite during this episode, so the new combination sorting did keep stopping. But we do have a nice backlog of iron ore in the warehouse now, so I then decide to upgrade this to red belt so that it's able to feed this whole system, which means we're now producing more than a single yellow belt. And for the end of the episode, I decide to come and put in a second iron line and finally put in the first of the load balancers on this belt here, because we are going to have a total of 4 belts, maybe even 5. We can go up to 6. We have got the space once we move to red underground belts going across the bus. And we come and put this line in, skipping most of the things using it. It'll primarily feed the military science production. But yeah, it is a bit of a longer episode than usual. It went on for, I think, 25 minutes worth of footage at 3 times speed. So this episode is actually at 3.2 speed, just to bring it down a little bit, but it's not so fast that you can't see what's going on. And I finally finish off the episode by setting up all things laser in terms of research. Now we've got enough iron coming through. But that's going to be all we have time for this episode. I do hope you have enjoyed watching. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing next episode. I'll decide that before I record it. But I do hope you have enjoyed watching. Please do come and join me next time. Bye-bye.